Sperm whales are animals with the largest brains to have ever existed on the planet. And they've had it for 16 million years longer than us.
Scientists just translated the first sentence ever spoken by a sperm whale. 4 words extracted from a mile-deep recording off the coast of Dominica by an AI trained on 9,000 underwater audio files. The research team went completely silent when the translation appeared on screen. Dr. Pratusha Sharma, who has spent nearly 2 decades studying whale communication, stared at the result for several seconds before calling her co-lead in disbelief. Because according to the AI, the whales were not just making sounds, they were sending a warning about ships, about noise, about us. And the most disturbing part is not what the whales said. It's that researchers discovered the exact same coda pattern repeating across recordings separated by decades. They have been saying it for years. Humanity simply never understood the language. Imagine standing on the deck of a research vessel at 3 a.m. somewhere in the Caribbean Sea. The ocean is black, endless, silent, except for the sound of waves striking steel. Then, from more than a mile beneath the surface, something begins speaking in the darkness. Not signaling, not instinctive animal noise, structured communication with rhythm, variation, repetition, and what researchers now believe may be the building blocks of language itself. For decades, scientists believed sperm whale clicks were primitive signals, simple messages for food, danger, direction. Useful, but basic. Nothing remotely close to human speech. Then Project CETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative, changed everything. When researchers fed thousands of whale recordings into an advanced AI system, the machine uncovered something nobody expected. Not 21 codas, but 156 distinct communication patterns, complete with tempo shifts, layered structures, and ornamental variations that behaved eerily like grammar. The AI had not discovered random noise. It had discovered an alphabet. And now, for the first time in human history, that alphabet may have produced a translated sentence. 4 words spoken beneath the ocean by a species older than human civilization itself. Researchers still refuse to release the complete translation publicly until peer review is finished. But one detail has already leaked. The whales, researchers say, are describing humanity, and the description is not flattering. Before we go deeper into this discovery, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because what scientists are uncovering beneath the waves may completely change the way humanity sees intelligence on Earth. The scientist who paused in a hallway. The origin of this discovery didn't begin inside a massive laboratory or during some dramatic expedition at sea. It started with a brief moment in a quiet hallway at Harvard's Radcliffe Institute nearly 7 years ago. Marine biologist David Gruber was sitting in his office, replaying audio recordings collected during research on bioluminescent jellyfish in the Caribbean. Mixed into the background were sperm whale clicks, sharp, rapid bursts of sound that echoed like metal striking underwater. To Gruber, they were simply ambient noise attached to another project. Then someone walking past his office stopped. MIT cryptographer Shafi Goldwasser had heard something in those recordings that instantly caught her attention. Goldwasser's entire career revolved around encrypted systems, finding patterns hidden inside signals that appear meaningless at first glance. She understood how real communication can disguise itself as noise. She stepped into the doorway and listened for a few seconds before asking a question that would eventually change marine science forever. That sounds like Morse code. Have you tried using machine learning to decode it? At the time, Gruber hadn't. In fact, almost nobody had seriously attempted it. But that single conversation became the spark behind Project CETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative. Within 2 years, the idea evolved into a massive scientific collaboration backed by the TED Audacious Project and supported by researchers from MIT, Harvard, UC Berkeley, and more than a dozen additional institutions around the world. The team established a permanent field station in Dominica, a Caribbean island where sperm whale families have been observed for generations. Their mission sounded almost impossible: collect enough whale communication data to let artificial intelligence search for patterns humans could never detect alone. And they didn't just gather data, they gathered an ocean of it. If you want to know what the AI eventually uncovered hidden inside those recordings, subscribe to Vault of Discovery right now, because by the end of this story, you may never hear the ocean the same way again. 9,000 recordings, 156 codas, one possible alphabet. What separated Project CETI from every previous whale study was scale. Earlier research projects worked with limited samples, sometimes only a few hundred recordings. Scientists believed they had identified around 21 major sperm whale codas, recognizable click patterns thought to carry basic meanings. That estimate seemed logical. Dolphins communicate using a few dozen primary sounds, so researchers assumed sperm whales probably operated within a similar range. But once Project CETI expanded the dataset, the old assumptions collapsed. Between 2020 and 2023, researchers attached advanced biologging devices directly onto whales using non-invasive suction cups. These instruments recorded extremely detailed audio while tracking multiple whales at once. Each tag carried synchronized microphones capable of separating overlapping conversations with a level of clarity scientists had never achieved before. Then the recordings were processed through deep learning systems trained to analyze structure, repetition, timing, and variation inside whale communication. The results stunned the research team. The AI didn't identify 21 codas. It identified 156. And those patterns weren't fixed signals. They behaved more like flexible language components. Individual codas could shift meaning depending on rhythm, timing, or extra ornamental clicks layered into the sequence, similar to how emphasis and tone can completely change the meaning of a human sentence. Researchers began referring to the system as a sperm whale phonetic alphabet, and that phrase carries enormous implications. Human language works because we combine a limited number of sounds into limitless combinations. English, for example, uses only a few dozen phonemes to create every sentence, story, argument, and conversation ever spoken. The complexity comes from how those sounds combine. According to the AI analysis, sperm whales may operate using the exact same principle: a finite collection of sound units capable of generating endless communication possibilities. Our findings suggest far more complexity than anyone previously imagined, MIT researcher Dr. Daniela Rusler explained after the study's release. It's forcing us to rethink what we believed about communication in the animal world. But the next discovery was even stranger: the vowels. UC Berkeley linguist Gaspar Beruz joined Project CETI to study the microscopic acoustic structure of whale clicks. His job was to search for hidden patterns that might resemble the building blocks of spoken language. What he discovered reportedly made him freeze in front of his monitor. The whales appeared to produce vowel-like sounds. Researchers identified structures resembling the A sound heard in words like father and the E sound found in words like see. Even more shocking, The whales seemed capable of producing diphthong-like transitions, sounds that glide between vowels the way human speech naturally does. In other words, sperm whales living in complete darkness deep beneath the ocean may have independently evolved vocal traits that resemble core features of human language. That revelation hit the scientific community hard. For decades, vowels were considered one of humanity's defining linguistic traits. Animals could signal, warn, or mimic sounds, but true vowel-based vocal structuring was believed to belong almost exclusively to humans. Birds chirp, wolves howl, dolphins whistle. Humans shape airflow into vowels that become the foundation of spoken language itself. The assumption was that this ability emerged uniquely through human evolution. The whale data is now challenging that assumption. For years, whale communication was treated almost like a type of Morse code, Berus explained during a recorded interview connected to the project. But what we're seeing now appears vastly more sophisticated than that. According to the researchers, the new analysis suggests whale vocalizations behave less like simple clicks and more like extremely slow-moving vowel structures. And that idea changes everything, because once you accept that possibility, the old belief that humans are completely separate from the rest of the animal kingdom starts to crack. For centuries, human exceptionalism rested on one major assumption: language belonged to us alone. Humans could take a limited number of sounds and transform them into limitless meaning through grammar, symbolism, and abstract thought. That ability allowed civilizations to rise, histories to be preserved, and ideas to travel across generations. We believed no other species could truly do that. But if sperm whales possess vowels, if they use phonetic building blocks, if their communication follows combinatorial rules similar to grammar, then that boundary between human and animal intelligence suddenly becomes far less clear, and the implications stretch far beyond marine biology. Because to understand what the AI may have translated, you first have to understand the beings producing the sounds. Sperm whales are among the most cognitively complex creatures on Earth. They possess the largest brains ever measured in the animal kingdom, weighing nearly 6 times more than a human brain. They live inside tightly bonded matriarchal societies where elder females guide entire family networks spanning multiple generations. And these groups don't simply operate on instinct. They have traditions. Different whale families display unique hunting styles, migration routes, and behavioral patterns passed down socially from older whales to younger ones. Not genetically inherited, but taught and learned. That is culture. These animals also hunt thousands of feet beneath the surface in complete darkness, coordinating movement and echolocation in environments where vision is useless. The level of communication required for that kind of teamwork is staggering. Researchers say it cannot reasonably be described as primitive, but one scientist in particular began noticing something even more unsettling. Biologist Shane Giro spent over a decade observing the same sperm whale families near Dominica. Over time, he stopped seeing isolated animals and started seeing relationships. It's difficult not to recognize cousins playing together while constantly communicating, he explained during a documentary interview connected to Project CETI. You watch mothers leave calves with babysitters, exchange vocalizations, then descend into the deep ocean to feed. The interactions can continue for long stretches of time. Multiple whales respond simultaneously, layering clicks over one another in rhythmic exchanges that resemble overlapping human conversation more than mechanical signaling. According to Gero, sperm whales even display forms of conversational turn-taking. not rigidly the way humans expect during speech, but with timing, pacing, and interactive flow that strongly resembles dialogue. And that raises a chilling possibility. What exactly are they talking about? Sperm whales can live for around 70 years. Some of the elder females alive today were born during the final decades of industrial whaling. Entire generations of these animals experienced an era when massive hunting fleets slaughtered whales across the oceans at industrial scale. That memory may still exist inside whale society. Researchers have documented behaviors resembling mourning after deaths within family groups. Some whales remain near dead calves for days, producing low-frequency vocalizations unlike their normal communication patterns. In other words, they may possess concepts for grief, danger, separation, and loss. And for generations, they have watched the ocean's surface, the place where engines roar, where ships appear, where noise invades their world. Long before humans seriously studied them, the whales may already have been discussing us. So when the AI finally began linking certain codas to environmental context and behavioral responses, many researchers were not entirely shocked by the implications. What emerged looked less like random noise and more like ongoing conversation. The first translation. This is where the story becomes genuinely unsettling, because translating a non-human communication system is nothing like translating ordinary text. You cannot simply connect one whale coda to one English word and declare success. Meaning changes depending on situation, emotion, speaker identity, and surrounding context. The AI first had to understand the circumstances surrounding each vocalization. That's where Project CETI's biologgers became essential. Every recording was paired with massive amounts of contextual information. Researchers knew which whale produced the sound thanks to years of identification work using tail markings and photographic records. They tracked who else was nearby, what behavior the whales were engaged in, how deep they were diving, whether prey was present, whether ships or artificial noise existed in the area, and how nearby whales reacted afterward. Over hundreds of hours of recordings, patterns slowly emerged. Certain codas repeatedly appeared during specific situations. Some codas consistently appeared during coordinated feeding dives. Others surfaced during bonding moments between mothers and calves. But the recordings that truly unsettled researchers came after major disturbances, events like cargo ships cutting through whale territory, military sonar pulses, or the death of a calf inside a family group. Following those moments, researchers observed something unusual. Entire groups of whales would enter into long, overlapping vocal exchanges lasting extended periods of time. These sessions involved more individuals, more layered communication, and significantly more complex click structures than normal interactions. The AI repeatedly highlighted one specific subset of codas appearing during these events, sequences with longer duration, richer ornamentation, and unusual rhythmic complexity. And then came the moment nobody on the team was prepared for. Late one night inside MIT's computer science lab, the research team attempted one of the first true semantic mappings between the whale codas and environmental context. Hours passed with nothing useful emerging from the system, only fragmented outputs and incomplete associations. Eventually, only Dr. Pratusha Sharma remained in the building. She was facing away from the monitor when the algorithm completed another processing cycle. Expecting more meaningless noise, she turned around casually. Instead, the screen displayed 4 translated words. She stared at them silently. Then she read them again. For a few seconds, she simply leaned back and looked upward. The kind of involuntary reaction people have when reality suddenly stops matching their expectations. A moment later, she grabbed her phone and called David Gruber. "I think they're talking about us," she reportedly told him. The phrase itself came from a coda sequence recorded after a cargo ship passed at high speed through a core whale habitat zone. The exact translation is still under internal scientific review before official publication. But according to audio shared privately with journalists covering the project, Dr. Sharma later summarized the meaning during a research meeting. "The whales," she said quietly, "were warning each other about humans." And here's the part that disturbed the researchers most. That coda wasn't rare. It wasn't some bizarre anomaly buried deep in the dataset. The AI identified variations of the same sequence repeatedly across the entire archive. Different whale families, different years, different regions of the ocean, separated by thousands of miles. If the interpretation is correct, then sperm whales have likely been communicating this warning for decades. Humanity simply lacked the technology to recognize it. Marine biologist David Gruber admitted that realization changed the way he thought about the ocean entirely. Little by little, he explained during a Science podcast interview in 2024, the whales are revealing how they communicate. The question is no longer whether they're saying something. The question is what they've been saying about us all this time. And that question carries enormous implications. Because if whales are discussing ships, sonar, and human disruption through structured communication, then they are not passive animals drifting through a changing environment. They are conscious observers responding collectively to a world humans have transformed around them. And if they are warning each other about us, what exactly are they warning each other about? To understand that, you have to look at history. Before large-scale commercial whaling began, scientists estimate there were over 1 million sperm whales roaming Earth's oceans. By the late 20th century, after centuries of industrial hunting, the population had fallen dramatically, dropping by more than half. During the peak of commercial whaling, tens of thousands of sperm whales were killed every year. Think about what that meant for a species built around family structure and long-term social bonds. These whales lived for decades. They raised young collectively. They passed behaviors and knowledge between generations. Entire social networks were shattered by industrial hunting. And according to the new research, those whales already possessed the codas, the structured communication, perhaps even the phonetic foundations of language itself, which means they were talking to each other while the harpoons arrived. What were those conversations like? Today, the threats look different, but they never disappeared. Modern oceans are filled with constant artificial noise, massive shipping networks, naval sonar systems, seismic exploration, industrial traffic, sounds that now dominate huge sections of the underwater world. For creatures that rely on sound the way humans rely on sight, this is catastrophic. Sperm whales communicate across enormous distances. Some exchanges travel for miles through open water, but the ocean they evolved in was vastly quieter than the one humans have created. Researchers estimate underwater noise levels have risen dramatically over the past several decades. To a sperm whale, that noise is not background irritation. It interferes with navigation, hunting, communication, social bonding, and survival itself. And the whales appear to know something is changing. But one detail, hidden inside the data, disturbed researchers more than almost anything else. The warning coda identified by the AI becomes far more common beginning in the early 2000s, the exact period when container ship traffic through Caribbean whale habitats sharply increased. In other words, the warning appears to intensify alongside human activity. The whales may not simply be acknowledging our presence anymore, they may be tracking the escalation. And now the discovery is beginning to spill far beyond science into law and ethics. Even before the translation findings emerged, legal scholars were already paying close attention to Project CETI. After the latest results, that interest intensified dramatically, because modern legal systems define personhood not strictly through biology, but through cognitive capacity, the ability to think, experience suffering, form relationships, make decisions, and maintain social awareness. If sperm whales truly possess structured symbolic communication with grammar, context, and shared meaning, then the legal argument for recognizing certain rights for them becomes much harder to ignore, and this idea is no longer fringe. Countries around the world have already begun experimenting with expanded legal recognition for non-human life. Some governments have granted legal protections to great apes. Certain rivers and ecosystems have been recognized as legal entities with rights. India has previously described dolphins as non-human persons. The broader legal philosophy is growing rapidly. Rights may depend less on species and more on demonstrated consciousness and cognitive complexity. Sperm whales increasingly appear to meet those standards. They live in stable family societies. They teach younger generations. They display play, cooperation, grief, and social attachment. Individual whales recognize one another over decades. And now researchers believe they may also communicate abstract danger through structured language. Organizations such as the Non-Human Rights Project have spent years arguing that highly intelligent animals deserve legal standing based on cognitive sophistication rather than species alone. Historically, those debates focused mostly on primates, but discoveries emerging from Project CETI may soon force sperm whales into that conversation as well. For years, scientists believed whale intelligence was impressive but impossible to fully prove. But a translated sentence could change everything. If sperm whales truly have structured language, then the way humans have treated them for centuries suddenly looks very different. Every ship strike, every fishing net death, every layer of ocean noise may be harming not just animals, but intelligent beings capable of culture, memory, and communication across generations. Back in the 1960s, whale songs helped launch the Save the Whales movement. But Project CETI may create an even bigger shift, because this time it's not just songs, it's meaning. For the first time, humans may actually understand what another species is saying. And according to researchers, the whales may be warning each other about us. We built the AI, we decoded the sounds, and what we discovered beneath the ocean may be an ancient civilization with complex language, family bonds, and cultural knowledge, teaching its young to fear humanity. The whales may have understood us long before we understood them. Subscribe to Vault of Discovery, because when the full translation is released, the way we see the ocean could change forever.